Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Straightforward topic, let's do it. What was your I hope I'm wrong moment in your life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. When I was in hospital with my son, the professor of pediatrics kept bringing new students to me and my son daily to observe what I just could not see as a first-time mom. The professor would ask me to do this or that with him, then turn to the students and say, "Do you see?" They would say, New batch of students the next day, rinse and repeat. By day 6, I had a bad feeling that something was very wrong, but kept hoping it wasn't. I hoped I was wrong. I wasn't. A few days later, my baby was diagnosed with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Meeting my friend's boyfriend. He was an unemployed steelworker, and the look he gave me was chilling. I mentioned it to her later. About a month later, she kicked him out. He still had the keys to the place. He was waiting for her one night and beat her into a coma, then sat there for 2 days when she died. I work with kids. This one 4-year-old was going through some major regression, wetting herself, wanting to sleep with mommy and daddy, having a lot of tantrums. It wasn't normal, and I've been a nanny or babysitter since I was 12. She also had a new babysitter, her aunt and uncle. As you can imagine, the red flags were adding up. So I was changing her diaper, the regression got that bad, and asked if anyone had touched her down there. She broke down crying. So I told her mother what I thought, like, hey, these are all major abuse red flags that only started happening when her aunt and uncle started babysitting. I hope I'm wrong. For the love of God, I hope I'm wrong. But she needs a professional. Sure enough, I was not wrong. The ugly black spot on my shoulder. Please don't let it be melanoma. Please don't let it be melanoma. I already knew it was. Fortunately, caught early with only wide excision and lymph node biopsy needed. 2 moments. One night, noticed one of my testicles was hard as a rock. Sure enough, testicular cancer. Many years later, woke up with a bad headache one night. Sure enough, had a ruptured brain aneurysm. Survived both and feel great now. When I heard news about a shooting that happened at the house my sister was living at, my aunt came to my apartment at 3 a.m. in the middle of a thunderstorm. She had just gotten off work and she had heard about the shooting, but no victims had been confirmed. And so I sat the entire day. I didn't have a working cell phone then, and I had went and used the gas station phone a couple of times, but police wouldn't tell me anything over the phone. Eventually, I was able to make it back to my hometown where it happened, and I walked up to the police outside the crime scene. They still wouldn't tell me anything, and so I was just like on the verge of a panic attack. One of my old neighbors waved me over, and we sat on her porch, and one of her granddaughters handed me the phone, and the news had released some of the victims' names, and the second I saw my sister's name on there, I lost it. I still remember every single second of that. Knowing my dad was going to die in surgery, he went from one doc that was too worried to put him under because his heart was so frail. He went to another doc and he was like, "Oh yeah, this is a nothing burger. You'll be all good in no time." I had trepidations and tried to voice them to him and my mom as he jumped down my throat. He wanted it to be true so badly that any dissent was a direct attack. So I held my tongue and hoped. Died on the table. After my husband collapsed, he was taken to hospital by ambulance. I wasn't sure what was going on. I was in shock and hadn't seen the fall, but it started not feeling right. They had me wait in a waiting room by myself once I arrived at the hospital. Then a doctor took me through a back way to another room. He had me sit and sat down across from me and began to ask if my husband had pre-existing conditions, something I already was asked by the first responders. I went from thinking it was him fainting and getting a broken nose to holy shit, it's something much worse. Coma from the fall? I don't know. He was 33 and healthy though, so I quickly tried talking myself down in my head. However, it was significantly worse. He hadn't had a pulse in far too long, and they couldn't save him. When I was 12 years old, I had a fear that my mother was going to die within 6 months. I did not want to leave her sight. I felt so sick when I was at school away from her that I would have a complete phobia of leaving the house. I no longer would spend the night at my friends, worried something will happen when I was gone. I even told my grandparents of my concerns, and they thought I was nuts. My mother was wondering what was wrong with me, and ready to put me in counseling for my odd behavior. I opened up to her, telling her that I just know she's going to die here soon. She reassures me that it's not going to happen and that she'll probably outlive me. On my 13th birthday was the last time I saw my mother alive. She complained of a headache and died of an aneurysm. She was only 36. Had a friend commit suicide in March. He wrote me a handwritten letter and mailed me a package but was leaving on a cruise. He got drunk, jumped, and they never found his body. But he wrote me a Discord message because he wasn't sure the letter would show up. So I spent 4 days just hoping to God I was wrong, but I knew from the first sentence of his message. Probably not the biggest, but most recent and memorable. At a club I'm doing AV for, they can't find the charger for the laptop that controls all the lighting. They grab one, and I say, hold on, check the voltage. Laptop wanted 19. This was 54, PoE injector. I said, stop, no way. It's not the right one. Guy handling the lighting says he needs it for tonight, and what's the worst that could happen? Owner standing there, so I tell him that the laptop will be fried. He has no copy of the license for the software, and how much it's going to cost him to fix after the fact. We need this for tonight, try it anyway. I backed up and let the lighting guy try. Of course it isn't fitting, but he's able to hold it just right so the charging light comes on. Phew, okay, I was hoping I was pop. Laptop lets out the magic smoke. True to my word, I charged him exactly what I had told him. This was the second time I tried to talk him out of something that wound up costing him a few $1,000s. The last time we had a discussion like that, I said, third time's a charm, and he realized, maybe I should listen. When I was 11, I was at a Little League ball game watching my brother. My grandmother was there and was telling me how my grandpa had a bad cold and was going to the doctor to get it looked at. I had this sinking gut feeling that it was lung cancer. It was literally the first thing that popped into my brain. Sure enough, later that month, he got the diagnosis. I felt pretty guilty for a long time, thinking I had somehow willed it to be so. I was on a night shift at a nursing home. One of our residents, let's call him Bill, always woke up at 1 a.m. every night to watch TV for 3 hours like clockwork. Done it for years. One night, I noticed it was a few minutes past 1 and the TV wasn't on. So go and check on him and he wasn't moving. As I walk up to him, I just go, please don't be dead. Please don't be dead. Please don't be dead. I checked his pulse and it seemed fine. Turned out his niece was getting married the next day, so he took the unusual step of using sleeping pills. The other nurse gave him some and forgot to tell me. Edit. Thanks for the upvotes. I really wasn't expecting that. Yes, Bill was fine, and no, the other nurse wasn't punished, and there was no major panic. After I felt the pulse, I asked if she had given him his usual medicine, and she replied with, oh yes, I gave him 2 sleeping pills. We were both busy, and I was only worried for like a minute, then it was fine. Well, considering the other stories in this topic, I'm glad to hear that Bill was okay, but there was a moment where, like that old meme, like, you had us in the first half, but, good. When the creepy, senile 95-year-old man living next door offered one of his bedrooms for one of our kids when I told him we were moving, I'd been helping him with shopping, etc., before and during lockdowns, and the comments slowly got worse and worse. Adult social services were involved. He went to hospital after falling, and a few weeks later, we got a knock on the door from some plainclothes police officer. I was not wrong. They were looking for indecent images of children and needed to know if he had ever spent time alone with the kids. He never had, as we didn't allow it due to all the creepy vibes. This, plus the other experiences, have taught me that my gut feeling about a person when I first meet them is normally 100% spot on. My grandmother went into hospice care suddenly last year. I already had a pair for the trip planned, and she could be in hospice for months. And my father had already gone out of state to be with her, and we really couldn't afford to send me too. And again, we really thought it would be months. So my mother told me to try and enjoy the trip as much as I could. My grandma would have wanted that, which is true. On the way back from said trip, we came out of a restaurant and saw a double rainbow. It was a Sunday. My first thought was, oh my God, she died. We had been very close. Unfortunately, I was not wrong. She was in hospice less than 2 weeks. My life has never been easy, but the fallout of her will has made things more difficult. and I still keep reminding myself to call her because it's been a while and I miss her, but, well, I'm just gonna have to keep missing her. The last time I saw my grandfather as we drove away, I said I'll never see him alive again. This was on a Sunday, and he died on a Wednesday. I'm grateful to have had that last couple of weeks with him. He told my grandmother that he wanted to see me. We lived 12 hours away, and as soon as she asked me to come, I was calling work telling them I would be taking off a week or so. He literally waited for me, and he had a wonderful week health-wise. He held on for me, and as soon as I was gone, he let go. I loved him more than anyone else in the world, and we all knew his heart was a ticking time bomb. He was the kindest, most giving man you can imagine. No one had a bad word to say about him. I miss him. When I had my first miscarriage, I could sense my pregnancy ending. I'd had bad morning sickness with pregnancy, and one morning, I just didn't have the usual nausea. I didn't say anything because we were headed to a standard doctor's appointment. I remember my husband commenting it was good I wasn't eating crackers and feeling better before the second trimester, but I knew it wasn't good. Doctor couldn't find baby's heartbeat, and I spent the next 2 days actively miscarrying. Long story short, addict boyfriend, now ex, a few years ago, who I was sort of sure was still using. Cute gaslighting and being lied to the point I wasn't even sure I could believe what day I thought it was, or whether anything happened the way I thought it did. But I just had this feeling in my gut telling me he was lying. I used to lie awake at night, repeating my name and address over and over because they were some of the only things I knew were real. It was awful, this hold he had on me. Sure enough, he was still using and lying to me about it, covering his tracks and making me out as being totally insane for thinking he was on drugs and booze again. A few years later, I found out he was also sleeping with our best friend at the time. I also had suspicions at some point that he had cheated, but I never imagined that it was them, who I spoke to every day, and even confided how scared I would be of this guy. My husband's brother was admitted to the hospital with a mysterious ailment, and my husband flew back there to help his mother manage the situation. My husband called and told me the doctors were still trying to figure things out because the test results were distressing but unclear. He told me what he understood about the tests. I'm a medical scientist, but neither my husband nor my mother knows more about medicine or human biology than any layperson, of course, so he could report the info without knowing much about what it meant. From what he told me, I immediately had the feeling that my brother-in-law would be dead within days. I said nothing because I just hoped I was wrong, and it's not my place to say it anyway. It was the worst feeling I had ever had in my entire life. I never told a soul about this until now. It was horrible knowing without being able to tell anyone. Edit. Some added info. Sadly, I was not wrong. After my brother-in-law was admitted to the hospital, they did tests to start to get a clue about what was going on. I couldn't tell the source from the test results, only that those kind of results mean the person is likely in multiple organ failure in a way that rarely recover from, and usually die quickly after. That was when my husband called me. After a day or two, the medical staff figured out it was due to a very advanced cancer that had metastasized to his other organs. While they eventually told my husband and his mother there was no hope for recovery, they didn't tell them how soon the end would come. My sister's husband is a piece of shit. Got a bad feeling the first time I met him. He's super mentally abusive, and I believe he's capable of physical abuse, but haven't seen evidence of it yet. She just had her first kid with him, and it was 2.5 months premature due to placental abruption. She's healthy and was being super careful. I'm skeptical he caused it. A third I just remembered. My mother had just died. My husband started acting very strangely shortly after, to the point where I was second guessing if I really knew the man I had married. He was in and out of a doctor's office for low B12 and a random swollen optic nerve. Then one weekend it was very difficult but not impossible to wake him up. The following Monday, my daughter had a routine surgery. We were home recovering, and he said he was going to go to the ER because he just didn't feel right. He called after 4 hours of waiting and said he was going to come home without being seen. I, to this day, have no idea why I thought and said the following, but I told him he should stay and maybe ask about a CT scan on his brain. I hoped my hunch was wrong. 2 a.m., he calls me from an ambulance, telling me he's being transferred to a larger hospital 30 miles away with a neuro ICU, and that they found a 6 centimeter mass in his brain. Emergency surgery, radiation, though it was benign, thank goodness, and the man I married came back to full health, acting his normal self. A person I just met about a week prior started asking me out. I told her no, but she persisted, said it would mean the world to her. So I relented, and lo and behold, I had my first partner. But something felt really wrong about it. I tried to ignore that because I didn't want to make assumptions about someone who clearly cared about me. After 4 days of steadily mounting anxiety, I broke things off. Her immediate comeback was, "I want to die." She slammed me with self-depreciation and sob stories, and eventually I told her to get that out of my life. A few days later, I found out from a previous ex of hers, whom she had sent to apologize on her behalf, that not only had she done this to that ex, but things got exponentially worse afterwards. This was a genuine abuser who commissioned artists to draw porn of her and her partner without the partner's consent. She had a picture of me. I hope I'm wrong, but I wasn't before, so I'm probably right. When I was 14, my mom, a teacher, took a year off for her health. She was chronically ill and disabled, and her condition was steadily getting worse. I often took off school to help take care of her because I was worried. One night she was having trouble breathing. She lived through the night though, and told me to tell the friend that I rode to school with that I was staying home to help her that day. After doing so, I went back to sleep. We had been sleeping in the living room together, her on the couch, me on the floor. When I woke up, she was cold and still. I couldn't feel a pulse. She wasn't breathing. I called 911 panicking the whole time, and desperately hoping that this was a nightmare or that they'd be able to help her at the hospital. The operator lady was really nice. She talked me through everything and told me that I had done exactly what I should have, but there was just no saving my mom.